Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Silver Lyming. I'm your host, Anne Desjardins. And the reason I have started this podcast is I really want to, A, raise awareness about Lyme and tick-borne illness, but B, I really want you to understand that it is possible to get better through this process. And there's a lot of things that people go through or experience that actually has bettered their lives a lot as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness. And that's another thing I just want to instill in people is that it can really be sucky and maybe take up a good chunk of your lifetime, maybe a decade, 2 decades, and you're thinking that it's next to impossible to get better, but you can get better. And again, through these experiences, a lot of people find their life purpose. And maybe that is really the main reason why we become sick with this in the first place, is to help us find our life purpose. It can be a long, lonely way of going about doing it, but it's almost an incredibly rewarding. I've gone through it myself, and it's like one of the most beautiful things that I can look back on and see. Again, living it and going through it in the middle of it was horrible, but at the end, I'm like, man, I'm so glad that happened in a sense, because it has just turned me into a better human. And I think I've got another one of those people here today with me who has gone through the experience of Lyme and tick-borne illness, come out on the other side in a much better place, again, found life purpose through this, and is here to be a beacon of hope for the rest of you who are looking to, again, get better. Carter Bradsky is my guest today. I found him actually through a mutual Facebook friend. I don't even actually know if you know this person, but she had come across what you and your sister are working on building, which it sounds like a fantastic idea for people. Again, having lived it myself, what you're working on sounds perfect for people with Lyme and tick-borne illness. And I'll let you really get more into the details of what you're working on with that, but your company is called Lyme-less. And I know a little bit about maybe using some AI and helping people coordinate more so successfully, finding doctors and ways to help themselves take care of themselves, and reminders and things of what they need to be doing with themselves, because it's a lot to organize. It's really overwhelming. You learned that experience firsthand as well, because Carter, it's not just you, but your sister and your mom who are all infected with Lyme and tick-borne illness. So if you don't mind, could you just share with us a little bit more about who you are, how you became involved in this world, and then, again, kind of some things that you're working on as a result of this, please?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that well-said introduction, Anne. I'm really happy to be here, so thank you for having me on. I'll start off at the very beginning, what cultivated all this. And it's, when was I first diagnosed? The process of discovery for that, as I've spoken to numerous patients, and it's a long and sometimes arduous process, unfortunately, longer than most diseases. So back about my senior year of high school, which is about 7 to 8 years ago, I had started experiencing symptoms, mainly psychologically, had a lot of anxiety, depression, brain fog, just unwarranted psychological symptoms that I had never been that kind of person before, kind of kid. Was always super lighthearted, always had a very positive outlook on life. But the fact I couldn't remember, what I had for dinner yesterday or something was a very sudden notice for me. And fortunately, at the time, as you mentioned, my mom had just concluded a 5-year search in her own process of getting diagnosed with Lyme disease. She had gone through multiple practitioners, been told many times that it's just all in her head. And she's crazy. And especially when someone told her that she had Lyme, and she brought that to other physicians, and they all said to her, we don't treat patients with Lyme here. You need to look elsewhere. So that was being a kid and observing that in the 4 prior years before I was diagnosed. It led me to think, is she truly sick? Because as a kid, you grow up, you think doctors, they know everything. They studied everything. So it makes you doubt. And I was like, is my mom truly sick? And sure enough, she got the diagnosis and everything. We were really grateful. She started treatment. And shortly thereafter, I started showing symptoms. And that's when she was able to really look at my situation and be like, those are Lyme disease symptoms, high probability that we were in the same area and we both got bit. She got me diagnosed at that point. And very fortunate, because at that point, she had already lined up a Lyme-literate naturopathic doctor that was the perfect combination of empathetic, but also highly intelligent and experienced in treating Lyme disease. So he was really able to guide me through, yes, the physical struggle of treatment, but also the emotional struggle which I think is honestly just as difficult and maybe even harder for some patients to push through. So fortunately, after about a year of solid treatment with multiple different antibiotics, herbal support remedies, I was able to get in a state of remission where I tested negative across the board on different hygienics tests. Fortunately, however, still today, there's inklings of symptoms that come up, especially as I get run down or stressed or lack sleep in my day-to-day life. So as you know, it's definitely, I'd say, and we'll get to this later on, it's a wake-up call. And I guess I'm happy and I'm fortunate for it happening to me so early on in my life, because it really gave me a different perspective on celebrating the little wins in life and truly being grateful for what's in front of me and what I have in this moment, because I know what it's like to have it all go away at a moment's instance. So that's kind of the rundown. I can go into, what helped me heal, kind of elaborated to it a little bit ago. Would you like me to run into that?
Yeah, if you don't mind. And then also, just to back up for a second too, when you say more like psychological, can you break that down a little bit more for really what that means? Like, I know I had a lot of psychological issues, and did you mention, I'm sorry, were you also maybe attributing that to co-infections more so than the actual Lyme infection? I think it was more Bartonella and make my head weird. But what does it really look like for you? And
absolutely. Yeah, I was diagnosed with the specifics of Lyme, mainstream Lyme, and then also Babesia and Bartonella. I think I was more positive or more infected with the Babesia and Bartonella than the mainstream Lyme. It's hard for me to remember, but I know my symptoms presented that way. And as a result, it led to, treatment difficulties as well, right? We get diagnosed and then we have all of a sudden to take 10 to 15 different medications, whether that be herbals or antibiotics, and they have to be taken with or without food. So when your primary symptom is memory loss and brain fog and concentration, you can imagine it turns into this snowball effect, where at the time I also didn't want to leave college because I was just entering my freshman year. So I'm like juggling new college life, school, identity, trying to still be involved and a driven student, but also trying to navigate this care journey while putting up a facade and a face that I'm okay to my classmates, that I'm not sick and I'm not ill. That was one of the more difficult parts. And that's why I go back to having that empathetic Lyme-literate naturopath, and also my mother and my parents and my family, who, because of my mom's condition and having her struggle for 5+ years, she really was not able to do a lot of the things. And as a result, she was able to empathize with me and truly speak it into an existence with me and keep things in perspective. It was just really important to keep things in a perspective and celebrate the little wins and break things down. If you look at it from the long-term care journey of getting back to healthy right away, right when you get diagnosed, it can be incredibly overwhelming because you really don't know what that path looks like. So I just took it from a day-to-day perspective and broke it down into small, digestible milestones and celebrated each day that I was improving.
Which is hard when you're like coming out of it and doing the work and trying to get yourself better. It's like sometimes you can get lost that you actually are getting better. So it is really important to celebrate the little wins, like being able to maybe even stand up and wash dishes or get up out of bed, or like just small wins like that people take for granted when they're not really struggling with something like this. Huge. And I was also thinking about you a lot in just that transition phase that you were already in your life, like going to college, figuring things out, being in a new space, taking on the stress and burden of college and exams, et cetera, and then having this on top of it. Like that would be really a huge struggle.
Absolutely. And it, like I said, at that age and that stage of my personal development, it played an instrumental role in how I will continue to live my life, and the purpose that you talked about in the intro, to really help others and be a source of hope and a source of inspiration for people who are struggling or just getting started on this very, very kind of blurry journey, if you will.
Yeah. And then what helped you to get better? So you had started to say a little bit more about that. Like, was there a major turning point for you then so at that time you got pretty sick. Did you have to stop going to school? Were you able to finish your studies? What happened to you there and how did you get better?
Yeah. So numerous things aided in the overall healing process. From the Lyme-literate naturopath to my entire family, specifically my mom, being the main catalyst that got me through my tough days. I was able to stay in school. Now, I don't know, it was from a grade point average perspective, it was not a very good grade point average. But at that point, I think that's also a lesson I learned in that semester, in that first year, was like, we're so much more than numbers, but also there was so much more to that number, whether it be low or high compared to the 4.0, than just the number itself and what I did in my test. It was the fact that I was still able to push through each day and still pass the class and I guess have the mental toughness and resilience, knowing that it was all because of my parents and all because of my support system. That today is like, I think I actually have that transcript framed, because to me, it was the lowest number I'd ever received in any education, but it meant the most because of how much work was put in to reach that point. So that, and then in conjunction, I also am religious. So I spent a lot of time practicing that. I did not have the typical college kid experience where you go to all the social events and gatherings. Oftentimes I would be so burnt out after a day of class that I would, retreat back to my room. I try to spend time in the gym, really try to keep my physical fitness up, because that's about the only thing that gave me energy, from the endorphins and stuff like that. And I meditated a lot. I've never done that before. I was a real skeptic about it. And then I started doing that in conjunction with the religious involvement, and really tried to adopt mindfulness and being in the present moment and not stressing about things I could not control. And that peace is something, and that appreciation, as I've said before, is something that I guess shapes the way I view the world now and everything I do.
Yeah, which is huge. And what a great lesson to learn, again, as you had pointed out, at such a young point in your life, that it will help you so many times over yet in your life to look at things that way. Again, it's things that you have to sort of learn it sometimes that way, or get a little bit more dialed in or clarity, because I'm sure that if you already had a religious backbone or foundation, this just kind of maybe enhanced that or heightened it, that you weren't too far off, but it's kind of just one of the worst ways to learn a lesson, but in a beautiful way,
Yeah. No, I was going to say, and on that point too, I think one of my favorite quotes after this experience is, experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. And oftentimes it's the most valuable thing you have to offer. And I think from that quote, everything I do, whether I fail, it makes me want to fail more, because oftentimes you learn through failure and you grow through that pain. So that's something I kind of live my life by. And that quote in Lyme was a big catalyst to me even thinking that way. Before I was just focused on, I played a lot of basketball in high school and early college. So I was just focused on putting the ball in a hoop. And that was my main metrics of success. And now I'm like, did I reach the key milestones today that make me happy? And did I impact someone's life today? Like, that makes my day so much more full.
You're going to have such a better life. Like, what a good gift in and of itself that way. And so, but it set you up to or have the life purpose direction that you're going in, which I think is really amazing thing too, because without the experience that you had, you would not have been put on this path in that direction. Maybe you'd still be playing basketball and shooting hoops and just worrying about getting on the board, versus actually really looking at what you could do to maybe substantially make a really huge impact on this planet. And not that basketball can't do that, because you can do lots of good things with that and inspire lots of people. But again, I feel like where you're going is just phenomenal. And out of such a dark, deep experience, to struggle and suffer and figure out what I do need to do to fix my body, and like how much time you had to invest to do that, and energy and effort, and a lot of soul searching, I imagine too. Sometimes, you really got to do those deep introspective dives to understand yourself better, to get better. But you're young, you understand technology, you understand the illness, so you can kind of put those things together. And not that you have to be young to understand the technology, but I'm probably at least 20 years older than you. And like, I'm just thinking about what you're developing, or at least what I understand of it. And it's like, man, like set up so much better to do that. That's what's supposed to happen, Talk a little bit more about what you've been working on since you've gotten better to help in this fight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think to piggyback off of what I said prior, the purpose, right? The purpose that was gleaned from this really dark in certain times experience. And to share that too with my sister, who also to me has gone through a little bit more of an aggressive treatment process. Hers was more elongated, 4+ years at this point. I think things happen for a reason. I truly do. And I think I've always thought that. And to that end, I'd always had a goal to create some solution. I've always experienced the most fulfillment when I help others, and really either help them reach their goals or get through hard times. So ever since high school, I was always thinking, I know it's what I'm going to end up doing is something involving, building a solution that can help many people, but I just didn't know what. And then when I was diagnosed with this, it was like, like I said, I'm religious. It was like God coming down to me and being like, hey, like, here's your opportunity. There's a saying, he gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers and all this stuff. Right. And I truly believe that through this and my ability to, the privilege of having my mom being able to diagnose me so early and me to get treated, but also understand the intricacies of the journey and the difficulties, but to get treated soon enough to where I can now have the energy to go tackle this for people who can't do it themselves. That's something paired with my sister's partnership and support, because she's just as much a part of this as I am, that we've come up with a mission statement to, really revolutionize the way Lyme and associated co-infections are treated through the story of every patient. So with that being said, the whole goal with Lyme is patients, can experience a more personalized approach to the way they experience and manage their treatment process. And we really want to work to streamline and simplify that process. So the burden is placed less onto them and hopefully more into the technology. And we also want them to be able to take care or take control of their care journey and be able to appreciate, by looking at past history of their treatment through the tracking, to appreciate the progress they've made. If I had something that I could even something as simple as clicking a button for every day, whether it be a sad face, a neutral face, or a happy face of, oh, I felt bad today, I felt bad. But then if I could see, over time when I first started, the frequency with which a happy face appeared more, like that would prove to me that this fight is worth it. I'm progressing. And that's exactly what we want to do with Lyme-less. We want to give patients the ability to take a grasp of that treatment journey and truly make a difference for themselves as they navigate it.
Yeah, there's so many things that I'm like partially half crying. I'm just like, wow. Like I think about this as a mission from God, right? Like I hear this in a lot of interviews, is that, again, it's like God touched us and God's saying, like, this is what you're going to be doing. And it's almost like you're unstoppable. It's not. You are unstoppable. You are on a mission from God to build something to help people. And it's amazing that your soul knew kind of what was coming to you. It just didn't quite have that. It was still very amorphous at the time. And then you got your diagnosis and it was like, bam, okay, here, this thing has been birthed and we're going to go and move with this. And a lot of times I think about the fact that I'm still alive. Like, it took me 7 years to get a diagnosis, and I was near suicide. Like, I really didn't want to be alive anymore. I was very much thinking that suicide would be a lot less torturous than what I was experiencing. And the fact that I'm still here, I do think of it as like, I'm on a mission from God to educate people, to show them, to share hope with them. Because that was huge for me, was hearing stories like yours of these people who had gone through this and gotten better. And then they're building companies and doing all kinds of crazy stuff to make the world a better place. Like, my soul fed off of these kinds of stories. And so I'm inspired in a sense to hear you also feeling like God has chosen you on this mission to do this important thing, to make such a big impact on people's lives. And then just even something as simple as tracking symptoms, like, we talked about a little bit already, but it's such an intangible thing. It's really hard to gauge if you're getting better. It's really hard to understand the changes that are happening to your body as they are, because you're still feeling yucky. Like, you don't instantly feel perfect again. It's a very slow, gradual transition for many people. Maybe there are certain people I've talked to who literally have been healed pretty much on the spot. And they're perfect again after that. But for a lot of the majority of people, it's a very slow, arduous time, and it's very hard to manage those symptoms. So for you to build an app or something that people can literally just go in and just like the restrooms in the airport, is it clean? Is it good? Is it bad? No. And then they can look back and have a track record. I try to tell people to just write down, even if they can remember, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how their symptoms are that day. So they can see that, because it's a very non-linear process to get better. Like you're still experiencing some bits, bobs and weaves with it.
Absolutely.
That's really what happens ultimately for people, is there are going to still be those bobbles and things that kind of take you back a minute. And you just got to remind yourself, like, it's only temporary, this too shall pass, and just to kind of keep pushing forward. I was looking at your company website too. And so it sounded like to me also you can help people connect with doctors, or
Yeah. So the big thing here too, and just to not like a general disclaimer, but we are very much like, our vision, long-term vision, is to have the ability, for a care coordination approach between the physician and patient. Now we're in the very early stages of that. We're currently working actually with multiple beta users to really hear their stories and work with them to make sure we're building the most comprehensive solution for the patient that's treating Lyme disease and going through that process. But our long-term goal is to, yes, have the coordination between the physician and the patient, and really allow for like a streamlined experience from both sides, and also have a real, personalized approach to that treatment to make sure that the treatments are as effective as possible. And also the patient can have a better understanding of certain things and use our platform as a source, of insights, of really valuable insights for themselves. So it's definitely, like I said, it's we're in the building phase, so we're iterating a lot. Obviously, we want to get this out to the community as fast as possible, but we want to make sure it's built with intention, and it's meticulously curated, and so we want to make sure we get it right before anything goes out.
No pressure, right? You're only
no pressure.
Their health and like trying to figure out what's going on and making sure that they're okay.
Yeah. I mean, and on the point too that you said earlier, like your involvement in this ecosystem of support, right? I just can't say enough, how thankful I am to have, number one, connected with you, for you reaching out to me, but also just the general community, right? There's so much support in the Lyme community. When you look across broader medicine, and from different people, different founders, and different people afflicted by different diseases I've spoken to, they are not as cohesive and supportive when it comes to a mission-driven approach to a disease. I've interfaced. I know you mentioned briefly when we were speaking beforehand, like my involvement with GLA. We've had conversations with iLads, and they've all just really been supportive in our mission and getting on the phone and discussing initiatives and collaborating. And it's just so exciting, especially as a younger founder that's used to my prior experiences in tech, in big company tech. And usually they're not as helpful. Everyone's competing against each other. But to really be at a point where the community is embracing you because everyone wants everyone to win, all the incentives are aligned, it's truly special. And it's just as inspirational for me to be speaking to you and hearing your story and being on this podcast, as I hope I am to you and to many others in the Lyme disease community with what we're trying to build.
Tremendously. And like, thank you for that to me, but also I never really thought about that before, and like where you're coming from is super competitive, and people are like, no, I'm not telling you that secret. Like, burn in hell, get away from me. Like, you are my versus this is an environment where everyone really is truly working on the same goal and wanting people to be successful. And so I'm glad that you're being met with welcome arms, as it should be, as we want it to be. But this network that we have with Lyme is so strong. I mean, it's funny, like even in my own like professional career life, there's so many people that I talk to that have it, that it's just the connection, of these things, but I connect to so many people because of Lyme. And then it's like, we talk about doing business separate completely, we are all in it together. And it is a very common thing for people to have nowadays. Unfortunately, there's so many more people who are affected by it. And so what you're developing is going to help that many more people. And it is really exciting to see because, again, these types of things need to get designed and built. And it is for people like you who have the insight, the knowledge, the understanding, all of the ingredients required to build a successful recipe. So again, no pressure.
No, I tell our early users, our early patients all the time. It's like, it's just as much you as it is us and our team. Like truly, when you hopefully down the road join the platform, you're joining a movement, to bring recognition and undeniable recognition through the way of personalized treatment to the medical landscape, and hopefully finally Lyme can get that respect amongst the medical community. And that's our goal. And so I hope everyone who down the road joins the platform or even maybe works for us in the future, like that's what we're going for. And it's really exciting. So again, like I said, it's just so rare. And how lucky are we to have such a supportive community to work and be a part of, to support people. We're just very lucky that way.
Yes. And so maybe that's a good place to insert this question, but, as a result of your experience of Lyme and tick-borne illness, could you really tell me what is the best thing that has happened to you as this experience has come to you?
Yeah. I think like I mentioned before, it's the purpose, right? I feel like, it was a little bit of a God-given, probably the easiest revelation I've ever been given in my life, where it's like, Lord, give me a sign. And it kind of was through the struggle. I was like, why me? I think a lot of patients experience that, and especially me as a younger person. I was like, why me? All my friends are out here living a good life, not stressing about health and, our time on this earth and existential stuff. Like they're all still living in the moment. Like, why do I have to go through this now? And now, of course, after the fact, I look back and I wouldn't change it for the world because of that insight, that purpose. And the thing that really gave me the inspiration to keep going every day through that treatment was because I now knew, this is what I'm on this earth for. I'm here to help other people through this vector, through Lyme disease, through their co-infections. So I think that's the biggest takeaway in that perspective. And I want to say too, it wasn't something that was like a watershed moment to me. I think oftentimes when you're going through chronic illness, you kind of get, for me at least, I got desensitized, I guess, to my new reality, and how the reality over time, it's like you're a frog in a boiling pot of water, right? You don't really realize like your quality of life is gradually deteriorating as you're sick, or it's gradually getting better. But you kind of forget what your healthy version was like, and through that experience, after long enough time, I realized I was sick enough, and I'm like, there's a real possibility that I could have this for the rest of my life. And this could be the way I live my life. And I honestly, at that moment, it was about halfway through my treatment journey before I reached the inflection point. I accepted it. I accepted the fact that like, if this is what is meant to happen and this is how I'm supposed to live my life, whether, be in a sicker state than what other people are experiencing, then that's okay. I'm going to make the most of it. And I think truly when you have less things to count on or be appreciative of, you're that much more appreciative of those things. So it just goes back to that. I think the appreciation for the little things in life, the little wins, the milestones, the family members who were there or the friends who were there supporting you through the journey. Those are relationships that will be lifelong. And I still struggle to put a value on. I don't think there is a way to.
No.
So
I think sometimes about those things, and it's like, how do you even ever thank someone or show them like how much gratitude or love or whatever it is that you've got for that person to helping you. Mm-hmm. I'm also thinking about something you said, and like, I'd like to go back and you're saying when you were sick, you just accepted that you were sick and you were just going to accept that as your outcome. Like what? Not as an outcome, but like the reality of that I could end up, not back to my original state of like 100%. I feel like a lot of people that I've spoken to, or at least some of my family members early on, were like, we got to get you back to 100%. We got to go actually back to the way you were,
And oftentimes I think through this struggle and this battle, you actually come out a better person. And I was like, I didn't really want to be that old version. About halfway through, I'm like, I knew I'd be a completely different version. Now, if that new version's lesser or greater than the one before, I couldn't tell you. But I'll tell you today that I'm happy it happened. So I think that it must have been a better version because I've learned so much more and I gained so much more insight and appreciation through the journey. And like I said, it's changed the way I'm going to be living my life going forward. So,
yes, it's set you up so much better for success and just a better path forward. I appreciate you clarifying that because I was like, wait, what?
Not the negative version, not the negative side.
But I understand what you're saying now. And you're also making me think about, I had a yoga teacher once always say, the body is just like a river and it looks somewhat the same always from the surface, but underneath it's always changing and it's never the same thing twice. And that's kind of the same, as in this whole transition. And are we better? Are we worse off in the end? Nobody really ever knows. It's just going to be a constantly evolving, constantly changing thing. And what really does matter is what you're explaining is how do you feel? How does it make you feel? Are you feeling better? Are you happier? Are you feeling more whole and more solid in yourself? Yes, I would say clearly you're energetically, everything about you is very solid and seemingly peaceful and content. Like you have some sort of contentment with self and love for self. And that's huge. And I think that's one of the best things that we can potentially get out of this is that lesson to love oneself, to take care of oneself, to acknowledge and to appreciate what one is telling ourselves inside, right? Like so many people have this voice that's screaming at them and we don't really ever do anything with it. And it's again, how we react to that, how we process that really matters. And so you've gone through a place where things were off and your body was yelling at you very loudly and you had to listen, but you figured out a good way to hear yourself, how to be with yourself, to be able to sit and meditate and to pray. I think is some of the hardest things that we can do because we're only left with ourselves. So I think that's why people are so resistant to this practice because they don't like what they're hearing. When we can come to the place where we're able to center ourselves and do those types of exercises, that just really, again, goes more in alignment with like being in alignment with self and having that self-love. I think that's one of the greatest lessons too, that we can get through this process. You just seem so wise and mature. I've been a couple of
Thank you.
And it's like, man, you guys are just, so much. You have so much insight from this experience, and it's just going to make this world so much better because you have so much more to give out of it. And like, it's just beautiful. And one other thing I was kind of curious about for our listeners' sake, can you talk to me a little bit more about the actual transition back to being healthy? So you went through, your sickness at a pretty critical time in your life, I guess, and it really, I think it probably impacted you. Obviously, we talked about it in many ways, but like the transition back to wellness, was that hard for you then? Like, were you struggling then with letting go of having to think about your health all the time? Or do you still think about your health all the time? Is that something that you think will always be there for you?
This is a good question because my symptoms and what I felt, I would have anxiety, right? I have different triggers, different events would trigger the anxiety to come up with association. And so there were certain events, like for me, for some reason, whenever I played basketball, I would have extremely bad dissociation and Lyme symptoms and anxiety and stuff that I just had never had on that court. It used to be like my sanctuary, right? So it caused me during my treatment to go away, don't go on the court or don't go in social settings because of the social anxiety. Or funny enough, I had a weird trigger from grocery stores. I think it was the fluorescent lighting or something, because I got super dissociated when I was in there and like kind of just anxietied out a little bit. And when I transitioned, and I got my negative test results and I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that like I should be technically or at least clinically okay, I started to go back to those same circumstances and I still felt the same way. It was like a PTSD thing almost, or at least I was triggered anxiety wise. Then I started to think about it more and more. I'm like, I'm going to keep going back to these places because the reason why I have this negative association is because that's the most recent experience I've had. So if I can continue to go back and have a positive look on that activity I was doing, I truly think it'll change the way that I view that activity. I'll no longer view it as I was sick and I couldn't do that when I was sick. It's now I have the opportunity to do this again and I wasn't able to before. Like, that's growth. So showing myself through the it wasn't right away though. I'm not going to lie. Like, each time I went back, I would still, I'd play basketball and I'd still freak out a little bit, psychology wise, with anxiety and stuff like that, association. But it was probably about, 6 months in of consistently going and playing with my friends every week that I turned the corner. And I was like, look at you, like, you did it. You hopped over that self-made, in a lot of ways, barrier and worry, and proved to yourself that you're beyond it, and you're strong. And I think, a lot of times, this is another quote, and I don't want to drop too many quotes on you, but it's like the magic we're looking for is often in the work or the things that we're not doing or are not wanting to do, and that's a quote to procrastination, but I also think it applies really well to this disease, because when you are past that stage of treatment and you are in a position where you're 80 to 95% the way there, like, pushing yourself back into the everyday activities to be normal again to yourself, to prove to yourself you're healthy, are so important. But it won't be easy. Knowing that will be hard, and that you just need to continue to go through and change that from a negative to a positive experience is probably one of the most valuable things that I learned. So yeah, that's kind of I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but that was the thing that I turned a negative into a positive, but over time, and really stayed true to it. And I guess that there was kind of a watershed, like, oh, hey, like, I'm good now. I feel good. I'm healthy. And today I still manage my intake. I still try to get sleep. I exercise as much as I can, but I don't think that's necessarily a matter of, I'm worried I'm going to slip back into symptomatic phase again. It's more of, I need to treat my body really well, because I know what it's like to not have health. And when you don't have health, it's hard to do anything. So the appreciation of the little things and taking care of the things you have is kind of the theme here. But that's what I do today, but not in the fear of being sick, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about so many different things that way too. And just like practicing or like developing the muscle to remind oneself that you can do these things is huge. And I think that's a really revelatory point for people to understand in getting a little bit over PTSD, including myself.
Yeah.
These experiences keep happening. But look, the last so many of them were good and they were okay. And so you can like take off some of that fear or make a little bit more space for some more good muscle to be there, as opposed to the bad one that constantly reminds you about the bad things that happened. And the more time that goes beyond that point, obviously, the more experience you can get to teach yourself again that it's okay, that you can do this again, that you're going to be all right. And I think that's a huge point for people to take away from this conversation and just healing themselves. Or when you're actually truly healed, when you're able to look back and see that and be like, man, I've crawled out of some seriously dark spaces and look at me now. Like, look, I've got this. I've got this again. I can do this again. And it's just nice to look back and see that. I've often thought too that Lyme is one of your lifelong accountability partners that you really never wanted, but it's there. And, the practices that you learn to do for yourself, like exercise and taking care of yourself and getting enough sleep and making sure you're getting outside and fresh air and stuff, like that's a really foundational basis that a lot of people miss. And that's why dis-ease occurs, because we're not doing these things. So for you to know, like, yes, I've got to do this. And now you've got to probably do it for the rest of your life, where you're going to slip off maybe and start to feel symptomatic again, which you don't want to do. But it's not going to be like, I think you want to keep it in a space that's not fearful though. Like you're saying, like, it's just maintenance, it's just taking care of oneself versus like, I'm so afraid I'm going to be sick again, because you're just going to react to things and draw that to you. And so,
yeah, exactly. And proving to yourself you can do hard things, right? Like, so even if you do slip back into it, well, you already overcame it once. Why not again? Why can't you keep going? And that's, I guess the analogy for me is like the gym, right? Like if I'm going to get a personal record in the weight I'm lifting, Or then I say I like lift really good for a month, I stop, and then I'm out of shape. But so I can't lift that same weight again, but I can get there. I know I can. I just have to be consistent and disciplined and motivated in doing it. And I think that's the same approach I take with Lyme. If and when it comes back again, then I'll know I can handle it because I already have the support system in place, the care team in place. And if not, honestly, even more support with people like you and other patients I've been speaking with. So I'm actually already better off than when I started the first time, so truly just taking inventory and appreciating that is huge.
Right. And it's just another situation where you can take the experience and use that as a positive to say well, I've already done it. Now I know how I can do this a lot faster and better and shorter and more easily because I've got so many more tools, like you're saying, to do it again. Hopefully you never have to. But if you do, then you're just better off because you'll be able to navigate that much more quickly through it.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And then your sister, is she still struggling a little bit to get to where you are, to get better?
So she's in a phase now, actually. You'd have to ask her straight on, but to me, we're roommates in New York City as well as, co-founders together. So we are very close and we're obviously very close, best friends, et cetera. She's 95% better. She's just working on, the little things and kind of, there's little tweaks here and there. Her symptoms were a little more physical, so less psychological. So she had more aches and pains and nerve stuff that she had to deal with that took a little more intricate treatments, a little more work that way. But she is better now, but always on that, always on the disciplined approach to ensuring wellness. And like you said, using the tools in your toolbox to stay healthy.
Yeah. Well, that's nice that you have each other in a sense too, to kind of help buoy each other along and make sure that you're sticking to what you need to too.
Yeah. And I think on that point too, of having someone else and having that support group, I was very fortunate, obviously, to have that emotional support built in with my family and having people who had a similar experience. And I don't want to necessarily plug anything here, but me being a mentor of GLA, they have a peer-to-peer program that I don't think people know enough about. And I think is really important that people know that if they want someone to support them that knows the journey, that's been through it, there is a resource out there and they don't currently have someone, they're attacking it solo right now. Then this peer-to-peer matching mentor program that GLA, Global Lyme Alliance, puts together is really helpful. And I'm also, I'm on that as well. So I'm always open to talking to people and really helping them through their journeys and answering any questions. But I think the emotional support component, as you said, is so important. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that resource is out there.
Yeah. Thank you for touching on that. Again, I had another guest in the past who's also a mentor, and I'm glad for you to touch on that a little bit more, because I think when I was going through it, I didn't know things like that existed. And so it is really nice for people to understand that a little bit more. They could reach out to the Global Lyme Alliance. There is a link for them to ask for a peer mentor, basically.
Yep. It's on, if you just type in Global Lyme Alliance, go on their website. They have a mentor section in the bar that you can click into, and then you'll create a profile. And then they actually will try to match you based on the specifications that you want, whether you want a male, female, are looking for support in, work support, or trying to navigate life with Lyme without a job or with a job, or trying to find a job. They have all those specifications that help you to make sure you have the most effective match for you as a patient.
Thanks. Thank you. So if people are looking for that, please obviously know that that's a resource there. I'm sure that you could reach out. I would imagine people could reach out to you directly if they really want to on social media and talk to you that way. Again, this community is very supportive, and then you can reach out to me. You can reach out to pretty much any person that has Lyme and as part of their description of who they are, and they will help you, I'm sure. Just if you're feeling, like maybe suicidal, or just not like you want to do this anymore, or any of those emotions, because the illness will affect your brain. And I do think how we relate to things like that. Like I'm not a suicidal person. That was the sickness that was making me feel like that. And it is one of the highest suicide rates. So if you're getting to that point, obviously, please reach out, make use of programs like what Global Lyme Alliance has in place, again, or just even another human to help you. do you have a timeline on your company? Like, do you have any idea of when that might be open for people to view more regularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently in the phase now of actually building out the beta version of the platform for the patient. So the goal is to have that completed by sometime this summer, with hopefully patients will have access by the end of the year, like full scale with a proper platform. Cool. So that's the goal. And with the physician side, further out, just because it's a little more, we still haven't started the process on the physician side. So
no problem. One step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. We've got to get one goal done and go to the next. You keep
little wins, right? And then if anyone wants to, stay up to date on that, I know you'll probably put our website link in the show notes. But you can just go on there and put your email into our website, and we'll send you an email, and we'll just keep you up to date with the development progress, so you can get it real time. In the event there's an opportunity to join the program, so you want to be one of the first users, or if you want to just have the most up-to-date information on what we're going to launch. So
that would be awesome. I appreciate that. So yes, I will definitely put that there for users in the show notes as well. And I'm really grateful for your time. Like, this has been very nice to hear. It's always just, I hate to say fun, because like, I don't want anybody to be sick, but like, it's fun for me to do these interviews and to hear other people who have gotten better and to find people like you. And it's like, yes, there's proof. There is proof that you can do it, that you can get better. And I think actually there's 3 people in your family that's proof. And so I try to get your sister on here too. And how's the mom doing?
She's good. Better? She's good. Yes, she's great. 95% better, here and there, just little flare-ups, but overall good.
Perfect. So there's 3 people right there in the Bradsky family that have all gotten better. So
there we go.
And you're like, I don't know about this. I don't know. Yes, you do know. You can do it. You can get better. There's a lot of demons sometimes that you've got to wrestle with inside. There's a lot of stuff that you've really maybe got to make straight. And I think that was maybe the hardest thing for me to figure out how to do, was to heal relationship with self and to understand really what I needed to do for myself to love myself better. And I know maybe that's oversimplifying, and it's like, oh, just love yourself better and you'll get better. It really isn't like that. And unfortunately, each person is their own beautiful Rubik's Cube that you've got to figure out how to undo to get to the end solution, to get things back in normal functioning patterns. But it is possible. And again, people like you are proof of that. People like me are proof of that. You just have to find the right fit for the individual and figuring out your specific needs. So I'm just really excited to see where you go with this, because your experience is just going to lend to being that much more successful, and it'll be fun to see. So I'm grateful. No, absolutely. Grateful for this very much. So thank you. Do you have any other parting words of advice for our listeners?
Honestly, I think the main takeaway is, like, you're not alone. You can do this. I think the early diagnosis process is scary, because a lot of people haven't heard of Lyme before, and a lot of doctors say it doesn't exist. So what you feel is real, and what you were diagnosed with and what you think you have, it is real, and it is something that a lot of us have, but there's a way through it, and you can get through it. Luckily, there's a saying out there. It's like, you can go fast alone, but far together. Well, you got all of us to go far together and really get you through the finish line. So take advantage of these resources. We got you.
Very good words of parting advice there. Thank you. You are never alone in this battle, and I appreciate you for pointing that out again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Definitely have a good afternoon. Thank you.